friends, so today we're going to start learning about narrative writing. To start our narrative writing, we are going to listen to Ralph Tells a Story. When you're listening to the story, I want you to pick up on some different parts of the story that make it a narrative writing piece. Let's watch.
Ralph Tells a Story by Abby Hanlon.
All right. So what were some of the different parts of the story? We have three important parts that we're going to talk about right now that he included. What do we need in narrative writing? Yep, we need characters. One more. What else do we need? Two more. Setting and what? Problem and solution. So we need characters in the narrative writing story. You need setting and you need a problem that eventually gets solved. So right now we're going to practice using those words. So I have a nursery rhyme written up on the board, and we're going to put in those words to make sure that this nursery rhyme has all of the different parts of the narrative. So I'm going to read it the first time. Just think about it and think about the different parts of the narrative. It says, Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. So now when I read it, I want you to think about the different parts of a narrative story. When I come across the part, I'm going to read it a little slower. When I come across the part that is part of a narrative, either a character, setting, or the problem and solution, I want you to raise your hand and tell me which one it is. All right. Humpty Dumpty. It's a character. You're right. Character. Let's get this. Whoops. Need a pen. Character. Sat on a wall. You're right, the wall is a setting. On a wall, setting. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Yeah, that's the problem. You're right. The problem. All the king's horses and all the king's men are characters. Good job. Characters. Couldn't put Humpty together again. Is that the solution? Yeah. Solution. Even though it's not a happy solution, it's still a solution to the problem. So what would happen if I took out one of those parts? The story wouldn't really make sense anymore. So let's say I take out the characters of this story and I just read it without any characters. Sat on a wall, had a great fall, couldn't put together again. Does that make sense? No, that doesn't make sense. So we need characters, setting, a problem, and solution in our narrative writing. But there's also some other parts that are important to narrative writing. We're going to talk about those now. Those are called title, author, illustrator, and plot. These are all words that we have heard before. But let's make sure we know what they mean. So what is the title of the story? Yeah, the title of a story is its name. The story's name. It's the story's name. What about the author? What does the author do? Yeah, they write the story. Write the story. What about the illustrator? What does the illustrator do? Yeah, the illustrator draws the pictures. They draw the pictures. And what about plot? What does that word plot mean? Yeah, a plot is what happens in the story. What happens in the story. All right. So I want you to be remembering these different parts of narrative writing and making sure that you include some of those, all of them, in your own narrative writing. But remember what each of these mean. Think about that for later. Now, go to this. You all tomorrow are going to get a chance to start your very own narrative writing. I went ahead and wrote an example one for you, so you know kind of what I'm looking for. So what you're going to be writing about is this. It says, write a story to describe a time you visited an interesting place to your teacher, so me. Where did you go? What did you see? How long were you there? And what made it so interesting? So now, I'm going to read you my story about my family trip out west. It says, over summer vacation, my family took a trip out west. We packed up all of our clothes and food into our new camper and started driving west. My brother, Connor, and I laid on the bed in the back of the camper and watched as we drove away from our house. We could not help to think about the next 2 weeks and how fun they were going to be. I was so excited to see Mount Rushmore, Yellowstone, the Badlands, Devil's Tower on this trip. These were places I have always seen in books and heard about in school, but now I was going to get to see them myself. The beginning of our drive was pretty long and uneventful. We didn't stop much to see anything. My brother and I kept busy by playing card games and playing a new game we like to call Count the Waldrug Signs. We started seeing these billboards for a place called Waldrug in Illinois. My mom said we were eventually going to make it there. One stop along the way was Yellowstone National Park. Mom and Dad took us to see a geyser called Old Faithful. Old Faithful is shoots super hot water extremely high into the air every 44 to 125 minutes. That's why they call it Old Faithful, because you can always count on it erupting. We gathered around the basin along with many other people to take pictures and ooh and ah over the wonderful sight. Our trip was going amazing, and we were having a great time exploring the western side of our country. Our journey had eventually taken us to Kansas. Kansas is a very flat state, with not a lot to look at. I think we entered Kansas, and I could see all the way to the other side of the state line because it was that flat, and there was nothing blocking my sight. The day had started out bright and sunny. We were driving down the road, passing our time with books and crossword puzzles. My dad was driving, my mom was making my brother and I a sandwich in the kitchen for lunch. The clouds had started to roll in, and the wind had started to pick up. We had driven through a few storms already on this trip, so we didn't think much about a rainstorm. Then, with one extremely strong gust of wind, there was a crack, then a boom, 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 boom. My brother and I covered our ears to shield from the loud banging on the side of the camper, and my mom crouched on the floor and yelled for my dad to pull over the camper. Something was seriously wrong. When we pulled over to the side of the road to see what was making that awful noise, we were in the middle of absolute nowhere. We stepped out of the camper, and there was not a person, not a building, farm animal, or anything in sight, and we hadn't seen anything for miles. We started looking around the camper to see what was making that awful banging noise and what had cracked. I noticed the awning in the camper wasn't in the correct spot anymore. It had ripped. The wind had ripped the awning of the camper, and now the rod was hitting on the side of the camper. How were we supposed to fix this in the middle of nowhere with the limited tools we had? The awning had ripped in half, and the clasp was no longer attached to the camper. We had no choice but to cut it the rest of the way so that the wind would not catch in the camper anymore. The storm kept getting worse, and the wind was not letting up. We decided our safest option was for us to find the nearest town for a hotel. We could not stay in our camper that night, right in the middle of Tornado Alley. Luckily, there were no tornadoes that night, and we were able to continue our journey the next day. At this point, my brother and I were still playing Count the Waldrug Signs. We reached up to 113 signs, and we still had not even made it to Waldrug. When we finally did, I was expecting it to be this amazing shopping center that was huge, but it wasn't. It was just a little convenience store that had a restaurant attached to it. It was not what I was expecting to find, but they had a great marketing technique. Everyone was at Waldrug to see what all the signs were about. This vacation was one that brought many different adventures, and seeing geysers and hot springs in Yellowstone to thinking the roof was coming off our camper. It was sure an interesting one that I will never forget. So tomorrow, you guys are going to get to start your very own narrative writing about a place that you've seen or you've been to. It can be a place in Ohio that you've gone to. It could be your backyard if you think that's interesting. It could be another state if you want to. Whatever you want to write about a place that you've been to and how it was interesting. But you have to make sure that you include characters, setting, a problem, a solution. And then I had a title. I am the author, and the plot is what happened in my story. Before we move on, you are all going to complete an exit ticket that works on the definitions that we learned today and reviewed. Goes over title, illustrator, author, plot, characters, setting, problem, solution. So you should know all of those. When you are done with your exit ticket, you may turn it in and move on with your work.